We lost half of it because of COVID and the need to address COVID and the inability to visit communities, talk to people, work on the ground, because the primacy of keeping people safe at that time was so important. And the achievements of the government that you have seen so far, often we don't view it in light of all of those challenges that we faced and the constraints too. Until now, we are reeling from some of the impact of COVID. Every week people run editorials and they do articles about cost of living increases, but the global disruption of production and trade that happened in the COVID period was unprecedented. And that led to severe consequences for many countries. Here in Guyana, we fared much better than many of those countries, including in abating inflation and having our people still have access to food supplies. In some countries, they did not have that. So it's been if you go back down that road and all of the planning that we've had to do and making sure that we get the health system up and running and efficient, or as efficient as possible given those constraints, it's been a huge burden. But let me come back to more pressing issues now. Earlier this week, there was a press conference hosted by Mr. Norton. And he brought with him Mr. Ramjatan to the press conference. Now, the press conference sought to address mainly the Venezuelan issue and the Venezuelan presence in Guyana, and the threats that it may pose to our country and our sovereignty. But this was, as usual, a press conference lined with half-truths, a lot of fabrication, conjecture, lies, and we've grown accustomed to that coming out of Congress Place. But it was also dangerous because it touched on a very sensitive issue, that is Venezuela and our relations with Venezuela, and could be misinterpreted by many who are not so familiar with the antics of APNU, Norton, and Ramjatan, to view this matter in a manner that is detrimental to our national security and our national well-being. And that is why it requires a robust rebuttal. Had it not been so sensitive, I'd probably let it slide. But there are a few things we discovered, that have become apparent now from this press conference. That so-called divorce that AFC and APNU spoke of in 2022, that they had spent a number of years as coalition partners and they were going their separate ways, the AFC, and this decision was made at the highest level, has been exposed as a fallacy. When that happened, Ramjatan spoke of it. I dismissed it as a gimmick, that AFC had no base had lost its base totally in its support because of the corrupt practices of the AFC members in government and because of their excesses, not just in terms of in financial matters, but on policy matters, and also their arrogance in their interaction with people. They forgot their base totally, and therefore they lost it. The policy actions relating to the callous way they dealt with the sugar industry and the taxation and all of these matters. So I pointed out that it was just talk. Many people saw this as a sign that the AFC was intent on rebuilding and going back to its core ideals that it professed that it had before 2015, which was democracy and being a good church force and a force for good and for accountability, that they were attempting to go back to that. Well, this press conference has disabused people's minds that there was a divorce between these two organizations. They're all together, and they will go to the elections together. Secondly, they dealt with a grave matter, but here you are two policy lightweights and people who have not been at the center of the serious discussions on national security and our preserving the integrity of this country. Being very glib and allowing the press conference to entertain some very dangerous notions. So we saw Ramjatan as in his usual mode. Ramjatan has, in his full lapdog mode, he has honed his skill admirably, the lapdog skill. So he was there every time adding to Norton. I saw his comments. Before you take questions, Norton made a statement. He said, before you take questions, I want to say my presence here is in full support of the statement made by the opposition leader. He had to interject that. Then along the way, he said, let me add that Aubrey is absolutely right about the issue. That was his presence at the press conference. It was to support Aubrey Norton in the lapdog mode, because AFC is nothing practically without the PNC. And so what are the things they spoke about? First of all, Ramjatan spoke about us not understanding national security, and I wouldn't even get into that. About Ramjatan and national security. This was the man whose biggest plan for fighting crime was to bring in dogs and horses from abroad. That was his trump. And amnesty for guns, as though the hardcore criminals would bring in their guns and give it over to the government. So what they did, they entertained a very dangerous notion from two persons, Adam Harris and Benchcop. Now, at these press conferences, they're more like, it's like me inviting Kwame McCoy and Jason Abdullah to ask me questions at a press conference. That's how Adam Harris and Benchcop are. So they're in-house people. They entertained this notion and confused it that somehow that we were going to cede control of our exclusive economic zone, or we agreed to share our exclusive economic zone with Venezuela, and that I had said that we agreed to do this. And then from Ramjatan's comment, if you listen to him, he confused it with what is before the ICJ. Now let me make it clear that no time in our history has any government moved away from our position that they find there has been a final solution to our borders with Venezuela based on the arbitration that took place in 1899 and the demarcation of our boundaries in 1905. No government in independent Guyana has ever changed that position or has suggested anywhere, locally or internationally, that we have a different view on that matter. Now and that matter is before the ICJ because Venezuela's spurious claim to our territory, which we see as that's the basis of the controversy that arose, that is now being adjudicated before the ICJ. Now, nothing else is before the ICJ. And for Ramjatan to take a false statement from Benchcup and Adnan Harris and then convert it into something that is before the ICJ is a very dangerous thing to do. Because by implication, you're saying that somehow they may have been a different position between the political parties here in Guyana or by a former president. Now, our maritime boundaries, the demarcation of the maritime boundaries, the final demarcation will have to await the decision there. But as far as we know, based on our land borders, we know what the maritime boundaries are. And there has been not a single proposal ever to share this with Venezuela or exclusive economic zone. But the mere fact that they entertained this at the press conference could be viewed from abroad as though we have a difference of views here on these matters. We have had a single position in government and out of government, the People's Progressive Party, and a national consensus on this issue, which is that our boundaries are inviolate, they are established, and they cannot be altered. And that Venezuela's claims to any part of our territory, these claims are spurious. So I just wanted to make that clear. And they did it at a time, had that press conference, at a time when the opposition and the government in Venezuela had just met in Barbados and signed an agreement. Now, in Venezuela, the government and opposition have been at loggerheads for a very long time. And the differences there are huge and intractable. And they have led even to Venezuela being sanctioned by the international community. Even worse than the differences here locally between the government and the opposition. And they could have united around one issue, which is the border issue. And here we had the leader of the opposition and his sidekick, the lapdog Ramjatan, going to a press conference to address this matter and entertaining the Adam Harris and Benchcop, who were just trying to score cheap political points at the expense of our national solidarity on this matter. The second issue that they dealt with was the Venezuelans in Guyana. Now, clearly, APNU knows they're going to lose the 2025 elections. I think they know this. Internally, the discussions have taken place in their camp, and they know they're going to lose the elections. APNU has this way, and the AFC, of inventing excuses. The last election, they lost because Russians interfered. Ramjatan didn't tell the press conference where the Russians are. Their last press conference, their last elections, they won, but the voters list was flawed. Now they're still saying they won the elections, but the voters list was flawed, and that harmed them. So now the new boogeyman, rather, is the group of people who are here now, the Venezuelans, who are here, that somehow they're being registered across the country in large numbers and by the People's Progressive Party, and they will determine the outcome of the next elections. So, as of today, if you look at how many people are registered in this whole exercise, from January 1 to now, it's in category A, it's about 8,698, and category B, 4,981, about 13,600 or so persons. Category B are those who are 14 years and above, and category A are those who can get on the list immediately. If you look at the regional breakdown, it mirrors the population density, the population of the region. So the largest are from region 4, 5,330 from region 4 of the 13,600. The next region, the next most populous region is region 3, 2,198, then region 6, 1,600 and something. And so we don't see any evidence of this here in the actual registrations that are taking place in the country. It's false. Mr. Norton, I think when asked by Chabral about numbers, he said they don't have numbers. Well, those are the numbers I'm telling you about. But he said that they were making objections. But the claims and objection period has not started because the registration period runs up to November 30th, and thereafter there will be a claims and objection period at which they can go and object to any name that they believe is fraudulently placed on the list. So clearly, he was lying again, because they couldn't have made any objections. The claim and objection period has not even started. And as you see, the numbers are not unusual based on previous registration and based on population, as we know, in the region. Ramjatan said something that was very strange, though. He said people who are known not to be Guyanese born, but born in Venezuela are registering. And I want to remind Ramjatan, because I think he himself has family who are born abroad, and close family, that they would be eligible for Guyanese citizenship too. Because a lot of the Venezuelans, the people who we're calling Venezuelans, they're really Guyanese. Their parents migrated when they were driven out by the PNC when we were starving in this country. We had no, PNC was rigging elections. They had no freedom by Norton's party. They had to flee Guyana to Venezuela, to the islands, to Suriname, to the US. They fled this country in droves. And a lot of those people had children who were born in Venezuela, but by virtue of the Guyanese blood, they're eligible to have Guyanese citizenship, notwithstanding the fact that they were born in Venezuela. So one would think that this guy is a lawyer and would understand this, but clearly he believes that anyone born abroad, even to Guyanese parentage, would not be eligible for Guyanese citizenship. I don't know if he was high or what at the press conference. I didn't look at it. So this is a big issue now, the Venezuelans here. Now, clearly, the concern about people who come here and have no connection with Guyana, that there is a need at some point in time to repatriate them. When APNU was in government and we were in opposition, and they spoke about building settlements in Region 1 for people, we expressed a similar concern. But that concern, we said that, first of all, let me tell you what we said. We said that there are several categories of people who are coming from Venezuela. Those with Guyanese heritage, they're automatically eligible for entry and citizenship and staying here indefinitely. That indigenous people on both sides of the borders, they have been moving, they're migrants, and therefore that our policy, the Waraus, etc., to allow free movement of the people, because many times on the border people move in the indigenous communities across borders. And then the third category of people who have no connection to Ghana, who come here as refugees, that at some point in time that they would have to be repatriated. But their pathway, they're not getting citizenship now. So their pathway to citizenship would be a long one. So clearly that concern is a valid one. But the way it's portrayed now by Norton, as though the Venezuelans are being exploited and we're bringing them here in droves for electoral advantage, it's nonsense, pure nonsense. And it's just a lame excuse for them, what they expect in 2025, already expect, which is losing the elections. I want to ask Norton if the Venezuelans caused them to lose 67 of the 80 local government bodies. If it was the Venezuelans who voted in Bartica and Madia and all of those places that caused them to lose those communities, or in Linden the 2,000 additional votes we got from Linden, whether it's Venezuelans who voted, or in Georgetown, the 5,000 additional votes that we got, whether they're Venezuelans, or in Mocha, the additional votes are all these communities. It's not Venezuelans. This is just another APNU red herring. It is, as I said before, it was an extremely dangerous press conference to have at this time. That when we're now at a crucial stage, our case is before the ICJ where it belongs. We have resisted every attempt of Venezuela to go back to the bilateral approach to the resolution of the controversy. We have the support of the international community on this. We have had the condemnation of the international community on against the aggressive and the pugnacious statements made from Venezuela, and we need to keep the national solidarity on this matter. And therefore, nothing should be done to undermine it, especially the small-mindedness of these two individuals, Norton and Ramjatan, who believe they can politicize anything. Mature leadership in the PNC and the PVP never would have done that. There are several things I want to come to. But before I do so, I just want to go back to this Gulsuran matter, because it has made the headline once again. And you know by now, the last time I was here, I said, I was written to by his friend Ramjatan, saying that if I don't apologize for saying he lacks integrity, they will sue me. And my lawyer responded, you saw the letter, outlining why I think he has no integrity, and urge him to file the lawsuit. He claimed that he couldn't effect service on me. I said the last time, please send it anywhere to the Anil Nandalal or to whomever. He was written to that effect. Could drop it off by my lawyer. I will accept it as service, and we will respond accordingly. Then I saw the issue surface again. They're more interested in publicity surrounding the matter. So I explained the last time why I believe that Gulsuran lacks integrity and why I will defend it in the court. And he has now responded. So let me quickly go through a couple of his responses. So Mr. Gulsuran claimed in his letter that one, he looked through the PNC manifesto and did not find the statement that I read out at the last press conference in the manifesto. that it's not in the PNC manifesto, of APNU manifesto of 2015, that 28 to 35%, and this is what it says: reducing procurement fraud, estimated by Mr. Anand Gulsaran, the former Auditor General, to be about 28 to 35% of total procurement spending of $140 billion. So he claimed that I'm basically lying, that that's not in the PNC, the APNU manifesto for 2015. He looked through it, couldn't find it anywhere. I have the manifesto here. I have it on the page here, page 46 of the manifesto. This is it. Can you please, I'm going to send a copy to him or his lawyer. This is a manifesto uploaded by David Granger himself. And if you go, you check Brigadier David Granger and the manifesto that he uploaded, you will find that there. So he couldn't find it there, so he sought to make a number of excuses. But I want to go back to Kiana Wilbur. This article written in June 7, 2015. It says, Chartered Accountant Anand Gulsaran contends that the weak systems of national procurement and tender administration needs to be addressed by the new administration once and for all, as they are costing the country approximately $28 billion annually. So he actually said it. Now, he claimed that he met me at the British High Commission. The last week I said, in opposition, I said to him, could you please come and tell us, we're forum or go in the newspapers or anywhere else, tell us how we are losing $1 billion. Forget the 28 to $35 billion or $50 billion, that's percent, he said in the APNU manifesto. So that could work up to as much on the upper end, $50 billion. Just tell us how we are losing $1 billion. So he lies and he says, I met him at the British function and I said, I wanted to debate a miler, and he was ready to do it. Well, we can do that at some point in time, but what I said to him, can you please tell us how this happened, which projects we lost this money on? Because if you claim we're losing this huge sum of money every year through fraud, you should know at least which fraud, which project is fraudulent. He refused to do so. So in my press conference that I had on the 12th of June 2018, this is what I said that this number was false. I'm not going to read everything again. Please allow Gulsaran to explain how 28 to 35 billion was stolen per year between 2010 to 2014 by procurement fraud. I don't know if I can make the request through the reporters here. This was 2018. Can you please ask your editors or publishers to give him 2 pages to explain, even 1 page? This is a blatant lie. He would have to go to which projects. You have to say X project we lost billions on. He has no details, absolutely nothing. It's a figment of his imagination. So it's not a new issue. He is until today not given the details of how, first of all, his estimation was used by APNU politically. It's in APNU manifesto. I believe he helped them to craft that. Can't be certain of that, but given the close association and what followed, I can reasonably surmise that. But it's there. He just said in his letter today, published today that it's not in the APNU manifesto. I've demonstrated it's there. I've demonstrated that this is not the first time I've asked him to go public with the details of it. So he lied about that too. He said at the British High Commission, I just asked him about a miler. He could do it even today if he had any integrity. Because when an accountant says this or an auditor general, he needs to go through the details of it. So to confuse the issue, he throws in, he was speaking generally about Marriott. So he needs to tell us, Marriott, how much we lost through procurement fraud, if it was Marriott. The Berbice River Bridge needs to tell us a bit about that. The Amilas Fall Hydro Project, which never happened, so we couldn't lose the money with procurement fraud. The East Bank Expansion Road Project, I'm still trying to find out what that was about, and the fiber optic cable. So if you add all of them together, it can't be that sum per year. And that's 1 year, and these are multiple year projects. So he's still, I believe, in the witness box. My lawyers, I have a number of lawyers who will ask details about this. And then he could prove his professional integrity in the box. The second thing I have, he mentioned in the article, is that I piloted the Audit Act. So he is absolutely right that let me give you the Audit Act here. So he said that I piloted the Audit Act through the Parliament. Now, this is the Act here. Now, in this Act, there's one very important provision that he should have told you about. So in 2004, when I was in the Ministry of Finance, this was tabled in Parliament, and I piloted it through Parliament. Asgar was not there. And we expanded the scope of the Auditor General to audit more entities, because the Constitution gave him the right to audit public accounts. So there is a provision in this Act which says, I'm going to read you the sections. The Auditor General, functions of the Auditor General. The Auditor General shall be the external auditor of the public accounts of Guyana, and in the discharge of his functions shall have complete discretion in examining and reporting on the receipt, disbursement, and control of public monies, and on the economy, efficiency, and effectiveness in the use of such monies. That's 4.1. 4.2, without prejudice to subsection 1, the government may cause an additional audit to be conducted by an auditor other than the Auditor General, where an agreement entered into between the government and the international financial institution so dictates. And then thirdly, without prejudice to subsections 1 and 2, the minister responsible for finance may request the Public Accounts Committee to cause an additional audit to be conducted by an auditor other than the Auditor General. So let me explain. If you read his letter, read the letter. A lot of fluff, but he says, I was not taking his side. I took the side of the international community because I claimed that they didn't have the capacity to audit, and it would have affected our international loans, etc. So that concern that we had in 2004, we reflected it here in the law because we allowed for a second audit. He could proceed, but we're a financial institution did not accept his audit, then we could have done a second audit, because they will not disburse resources on the basis of their assessment that the office was not capable at that time. We just started building capacity. Remember, we just got into office. But the next provision is the most important one. It says, the Auditor General shall control all audits, and only and the government can do any internal audit, but any external auditor has to go through the Auditor General's office, or with one exception, that the Minister of Finance will go to the Public Accounts Committee and can commission another audit. Now, Mr. Gulsaran, in 2015, was handpicked by APNU to do forensic audits. He should know this the law well, because he quoted me as piloting this in his letter today. He should know this law very well, because this is the law that he operated under. To know that the Minister of Finance could not contract him directly to do any audit, that it was illegal to do so when he took the job as a forensic auditor for the government. If it didn't go through the Auditor General, and it did not go through the Auditor General, it had to go through the Public Accounts Committee of Parliament, and that never happened. He participated in an illegality, fully well knowing that this law doesn't allow it, because he was handpicked by APNU, being close to APNU. So two laws he broke. This law here, knowingly, and the same Procurement Act that he writes about. How come he was not concerned about how his services were procured for millions of dollars without a public tender? That it should have gone through a public tender for procuring the services of the forensic auditors, but he was not procured through a public, his services not through a public tender, handpicked, given the work for millions of dollars in violation of the Procurement Act of this country. And secondly, it was done in flagrant violation of the same law that I piloted, that he operated under all the years. So we will be asking about this too, about when we talk about integrity in public life, and he writes all the time about this. He will have to answer about why he took a job without any tender. If he knew it was illegal, he should know best about these things. And the fact that he now makes it that in his letter he was arguing for his staff. He never argued for his staff. He came with this obscene request to address his salary, and we had to do it in the Act. The Act is the proof itself, the Audit Act, where we index his salary to that of the Chief Justice. We had to do it because he said, we said if we do this, it will trigger generalized increase with the staff. And he was adamant, and we had to index him. His staff didn't get an adjustment at the time of this act. And this fabrication, he wanted to take a loan to pay his staff or something. He can't take a loan. He has no authority to contract loans. The Audit Office can't do that. Only the Minister of Finance. So all of that is a red herring. You should read the letter, and it leaves a lot of openings. So I intend, these are just a little snippet of what I will demonstrate. This man has been writing for 15 years now on everybody. Ashni Singh is not accountable, nobody is accountable. And he had a free pass. He said out of the goodness of his heart, he came back to Ghana after he had some introspection when he was abroad, and came back to serve the people, and then left because of the Dolphins camp. The only reason he came back, because he had again this obscene request to continue working abroad and keeping the position as Auditor General here. And we had allowed him, we had given him several extensions and approval to do that. And we said, enough is enough. After so many extensions to work at the UN, the office here needs a substantive Auditor General. So you either come back or you give it up. And he came back and got very upset with us, and then he said he left because of the dolphin scam. So a lot of those things will come out in the court case. And it's time the reason I'm doing this is because for too long we have allowed people to get away with their lies. I saw another one named Charles Sugrim, a total failure from the AFC days. He just posted, I sent some people to burn down his furniture factory. I didn't even know when I was president. Now I'm finding out that he had a furniture factory. But they post these lies all day long, and we've just ignored it. It's time that we start making people accountable for what they say. So he will get a chance to give all the explanations when my lawyers question him in court, and then demonstrate how pure and how he discharged himself in all of these areas with the greatest of integrity. It's my position, I maintain the position. He has no integrity to speak on anything, having violated these things himself. In keeping with my issue of responding, making sure that nothing that disparages the PPP's track record and rewrites the history of our track record and our tenure in government, I need to respond to a few things. So I noticed a series of editorials in the Starbuck News. And what struck me is that the one on 14th of October seemed to be written by a PNC person. So listen, a living wage. It's titled A Living Wage. So it speaks about all of this money that we have now. Again, the same line, to pay everything out, pay everyone a high wage and stuff like that. And then it makes a few arguments. So the first is a 2015 Global Financial Integrity Report showed that for the years 2008 to 2012, illicit financial flows, primarily in the form of under-invoicing of imports and other tax evasion practices, represented 511.2% of the country's spending on education and 264% on the health sector budget. Now, we've addressed this matter before, but why would in 2023, someone use a 2015 report for the period 2008 to 2012? 11 years ago, in the period when I was president. So what does it say now? It just shows you this fixation. We've addressed this issue before, but on October 14, 2023, they're using a 2015 report to speak about what happened, what they claim happened in 2008 to 2012 in financial flows. So what happened? This didn't stop this on the invoicing practices, etc. This, I explained before that in looking at balance of payments, often there is an error. And the error is used because there's always a mismatch. It's a balance sheet. So the error item is often considered illicit imports. or on the invoicing of imports. But today I'm not going to explain that again. But clearly someone had a design to show that, oh, in that period on the Jagdeo, this is what happened. 2015 report to 28 and stuff. The same article says, it goes on to speak about the 16% VAT. The Bharrat Jagdeo imposed 16% VAT caused the biggest spike in inflation in 2012 of 12.3% in 2007. Now, in 2007, I just went online. I typed in 2007 inflation. This is what came up. 2007 inflation up by largest amount in 17 years. Guess which country? The United States. In 17 years, the 2007 inflation was the highest for 17 years in the US. And why? There was a spike in global energy prices and food prices in 2007. If any person had just done that, check the year 2007, but they said it was the VAT that caused this. The VAT caused this spike in inflation. The US didn't introduce VAT in 2007. They had a sales tax long before, but they had the biggest spike in 17 years in 2007. So it was a global issue. The fact is, so they lamented this 16% and said, oh, I mentioned when we introduced it that it would be revenue neutral. So I had explained this before, that the VAT, when we introduce VAT, we remove a whole series of other taxes, including the consumption tax, which had rates of 0, 10, and 30%. So the consumption tax were removed, and 4 other taxes, including the excise tax and all of those, were removed. And they were all combined in the value-added tax. CARTAC at that time did this study, the IMF, and said for it to be revenue neutral, you had to introduce VAT at 16%, but across all items, on every good and service in this country. I was president, I said that will never happen. What did we do? We exempted nearly 50 food items. So it was 0 for those food items. We exempted electricity from VAT. We exempted water from VAT. We exempted educational services, health services. All of these were not data. All of those were exempted from VAT, just to make sure that it was done in a manner that didn't affect ordinary people. They lamented that, but they didn't complain that APNU introduced the VAT on all of those items when they got into office. So this editorial here is hopeless. It's very hard sometimes to think that a serious newspaper will allow such garbage, which are not fact-checked. I don't mind people fact-check things, but this garbage to be treated as an editorial. Just a cursory check would allow you to do that. And editorials are supposed to mean more. They're supposed to be more research pieces and pieces that allow people to think. Not like an APNU piece that is total lie. So that there is it for you. The next one said, he said, they said. So this has to do a lot with what happened. APNU reported that, and Patterson said that the CEO, the president of Exxon, the local Alistair Rutledge, said that there was an agreement on the figure for the audit of $3 million. I said to the newspaper, I said to the press conference, President Ali spoke with several individuals. He spoke with the GRA. He spoke with Bobby Gosai. He spoke with Mr. Rutledge. Mr. Rutledge said to him that he never told the opposition there was an agreement, that this was discussed. Never any agreement. Now, Patterson came back after I said that and said, I'm lying. So this could easily be verified. So this is what the newspaper says. So either Mr. Jagdeo is lying or the 5 opposition members are lying. If 5 people are lying in consort, that would constitute a conspiracy of sorts, which is highly improbable in this particular instance, given all the details of the exchange they've supplied. So they're saying that it's highly improbable that 5 APNU persons could lie. And I'm thinking about the election results. How many of them got together and lied? Not just 5. The whole leadership of the APNU and AFC about their statements of poll. And they find that highly improbable. So this could have easily been verified by calling Exxon and asking the individual what he actually told the people. And let them sort it out between Exxon, because that's what he said to us. As far as we're concerned, we didn't care what he said to them, because we know once our advisor, which is the GRA, said to us to close the audit at 214. That's the number, and that stands as of now. So notwithstanding what Mr. Rutledge said at his press conference, that was the government position and remains the government position, and I'm happy that the GRA clarified it, that the letter he wrote to them and to IHS Markit was never intended to reopen the issue of the 214. In fact, he has already advised the government since August 8th that that is the figure that we close it at. And we have been consistent throughout. That's our position. So I don't know who is lying, whether it's the ExxonMobil, Mr. Rutledge, or the APNU cabal. But for Stavros News to say that I am lying, either Jagdeo is lying, I'm just reporting what I was told by the president. It's easy to answer that. And if you're saying the president didn't call him, it's easy to find out. I just said that the president called, and I believe it. In fact, I called Mr. Rutledge too, and he confirmed the same thing. So it got to be the APNU who is lying here. Either them or Exxon is. But we're not taking any blame for this, and the fact is that our position remains consistent from the beginning, and it remains until today that is where the audit would be closed at. I've said that from the beginning. 6 months ago, I said this, even before this whole controversy erupted. I said that, and that's our position as of today. We have remained consistent. on this issue. I'm going to deal quickly with a couple of oil and gas matters because I see the Kaichor News people here in full numbers and I didn't want to disappoint them. So, I just need, let me go through a few things. So Exxon had refuted Jagdeo's claim on closure of 214 audit. So he couldn't refute any claim of mine. In fact, I made a statement, not a claim. And the statement was, we've been advised by the GRA that it's 214 in a letter of August 8, and that is the position we're going with. And that's the government's position. It's the president's position, the cabinet position. I'm not making no claim here. So I'm telling you what our position has been and has always been. So Exxon Head can't refute anything. So, and as we've seen, I don't know what happened, but the GRA said he misinterpreted their letter. Now, I saw something about ring fencing. This blatant lie, how could you lie this much? This newspaper is really like, I don't know how could you deal with like this sort of thing. It's a new realm that we're operating in. So VP Jagdeo claims ring fencing oil projects would leave Guyana with nothing in the future. But I said we'd have nothing in the future. I spoke about what our position has been and what ring fencing will do, and about the timing that with money coming to the Treasury. That is the whole issue that I was speaking about. Not that nothing will come in the future. That it would, if you ring fence this project now, it's true that we could get more because you will pay off for the investments earlier, so you will start receiving a higher revenue flow earlier. If the ring fencing, there's no ring fencing, therefore it will take a bit longer to recover, get their revenue. So it comes in the back end, more revenue, but it comes from a larger production. So the revenue increases dramatically if the money that would have come in earlier gets reinvested. That is what I was explaining. That leaves nothing in the future. And so it is unbelievable it's so assuming, and the idea I was going after is that if you end at one project, that is what I was talking about, not future money. Because if you end at one project and you ring fence and you collect and there's no new investment, well then you're not going to get any additional resources in the future. The nuances are often lost on Glenn Lal. So Glenn Lal says, Lal said he was astonished to hear Vice President justify selling out his country by not ring fencing the oil project. He was astonished to hear, if you say anything that sounds technical to Lal, he doesn't understand. How he's astonished to say anything. So this is a daily thing, and now we're losing $4 billion. While hundreds of Guyanese go hungry daily, Lal justifies foregoing $4 billion to Exxon yearly. Anyhow, maybe I shouldn't bother too much. I'm just wasting my time here. Let me go straight to questions. Yes, please.
News. Three quick questions. The first is, you mentioned the audit. Given the tedious nature of this first audit and all that we've seen unfold, and also considering the fact that Guyana will have to stand the legal expenses for ExxonMobil should we go to arbitration, has government at any point in time considered collecting a settlement and moving forward? That's the first question.
No, because if the settlement is our advisor, we had two sets of advisors. The first group that conducted the audit, and they said, there are 214 here that should not go into the cost bank or come out of the cost bank. And our technical guys said, that is the GRA said, we should close the audit at that level. I don't believe there is scope at this stage for that, especially given the magnitude of reduction that Exxon is talking about, moving from 214 to 3 million. So that effectively, if you're saying we'd settle at $3 million, and that would effectively leave government maybe with half of that or so, those figures are not palatable at all. So we would have to maybe go to arbitration on this matter.
Has government sort of started crunching the numbers on how much it would cost to go to arbitration?
No, we have not done that. But I think this is the easiest way. And given also the kind of populism of the like Kaichor News and the others, I think you need an independent third party to deal with this. If you settle on any figure with Exxon, if you settle at 200 million, you'd have somebody saying, oh, we gave in to Exxon. And if you settle at 3 million, it's worse. And therefore, you need a third party that would deal with all of these issues. Maybe a third party that could be agreed to by in both ways. The arbitration, that provides for a third party, but maybe some other mechanism where a third party, not contemplated right now by the PSA, but a third party that everyone has faith in, the whole country, maybe that is a route that could be explored. But right now, I think we should not engage in negotiations.
Thank you. On the second audit, have you had an opportunity to review some of the preliminary findings as yet?
I told you already, I'm not getting involved in this process. It's a technical, if I review it, I know what I've seen the audit. It's with the GRA. Everybody has seen the audit. But I made this clear 6 months ago when Marcel spoke to me about this. I'm not commenting on numbers. This must be done by our advisors. They go through the audit, they look at the quality of the audit first, they would look at the findings of the audit and then advise the government. They can say, we suggest that these numbers be negotiated down, or there are deficiencies in the audit. The guys have to fix the deficiencies, or thirdly, close the audit as it is, and then we'll act on it. So although I may have a view on the matter, I'm not prepared to express that in the public domain because I don't want to influence the technical process. There is a technical process here, and I made it clear that politicians must not influence that technical process.
Thank you. Now, I know we've spoken quite a bit about the costs and the effective ring fencing, but just for the record, can you say what is government's position on Exxon perhaps using some of its revenues to cover the expenses of Kaichur and Kanji?
But that would be illegal.
Thank you.
That would be illegal if Exxon is using its expenses to cover Kanji and Kaichur. It would be illegal because it is effectively the project is ring fenced around the Stabroek block, but not for Kanji or Kaichur. It would be illegal.
Thank you. Now, turning to ExxonMobil's press conference, which you touched on, Alistair Routledge made some comments about the capacity of the Ministry of Natural Resources to fulfill some of its new responsibilities in the new PSA as well as the legislation. How does government feel about such a criticism? And as a follow-up to that, he said that a bid was submitted for the auction, but feedback was also provided on the fact that Exxon finds the relinquishment provisions to be too challenging, unusually short, and they would not sign it as is. Is government prepared to be flexible on that?
So, on the capacity issue, or let me deal with the other issue first, and then I will deal with capacity. Let me make it clear that we went through a public process to finalize the new draft PSA, the new PSA, and Petroleum Activities Bill. We had these drafted by a group, IHS Markit, that has international expertise in the oil and gas sector. They're very familiar with the regime, the fiscal regimes, as well as relinquishment regimes in other parts of the world. We bought that expertise. We gave instructions that, and this was through an iterative process, that we want to have our fiscal regime remain competitive, but it must change from the conditions, the fiscal regime of the Stabroek block. And we have seen what that looks like today, moving up from 2% to 10% royalty, and then effectively ring fencing by smaller blocks, the 65% for cost recovery. These are the important provisions of and a 10% corporate tax. They said to us, this is very competitive globally. You remain in the spectrum when we look from the spectrum of fiscal regimes globally, you remain maybe towards the upper end, but competitive. They also drafted the other provisions of the PSA. They suggested that we strengthen the loose arrangements that we had and the lax regime that we had for acquiring blocks and then relinquishing areas after a certain period of time. They put in there what they believe is a global norm. And they also put in, we insisted that there be some financial penalties should people not achieve their commitments, to discourage people taking these areas, holding on to them, not doing anything for the entire duration of the exploration license, and then giving them back. We lose as a country because no activity takes place there. To discourage that, we have some robust financial penalties. The point I'm making, this came out of a group that has international expertise. We then put that document to public consultation. We received a number of comments from various groups. We shared these with our consultants, and we incorporated some of these comments. If ExxonMobil, here in Guyana or in Texas, believe that we must take every one of their comments on our draft PSA and accept those comments fully, wholeheartedly, and then incorporate them in the new PSA, they need to think again. They need to think again. So, this is not the era where they will draft a cabinet decision for the government of Guyana, for the Ministry of Natural Resources, and the government of the ministry will then take a cabinet decision drafted by Exxon to the cabinet for approval. And that is what happened with the 2016 agreement. Exxon, the Clyde and Company report showed that the first draft of the cabinet paper was produced by Exxon. And then it went, Trotman and the others took that to the cabinet. This is a new government, a different dispensation. So if they believe that if they are sweetened by that approach, well, it's not going to happen now. And secondly, I saw Mr. Rutledge comment that they can't sign the new PSA as is currently drafted. So he probably got sweetened by the Stabroek and Exxon by the Stabroek PSA. And therefore they're comparing the two, and this looks very different. The conditions seem onerous. We don't believe the conditions are onerous. They are canvassed by an international advisor, and we are told that they are not onerous. And they would allow for effective management of the sector. So if they don't want to accept the conditions of the new PSA, now I'm not saying that it's hard and fast and there'd be nothing like minor things change when we get to the contracting stage, but not the core terms, not the core terms, not the fiscal terms. Those fiscal terms are settled, what I just explained to you. We're not going to weaken the PSA to suit ExxonMobil, the new PSA. So if they don't want to sign it, fine, they don't need to sign it. We're not going to just change this PSA and make it the way Exxon wants it. That probably happened in 2016. It's not going to happen now. So Mr. Rutledge should look at their capacity, and we want them to do well in Guyana. We want them to produce the oil. We want them to produce increasing amounts of oil. We want them to make money. We want to make sure that this country gets its fair share of the money. We want our oil produced in a safe manner, protecting our people. We want Guyanese to benefit from this production through local content. That's their responsibility. Our capacity, we will deal with it. So his comment about oh, we may lack capacity. The way I saw it is that we must weaken the provisions of the Act or the PSA because we don't have the capacity to ask for all of this information and process all of this information. We just spoke about the building of the capacity now and moving to operational, make sure that we proper police these contracts at the operational level. So if that's his thinking, we must weaken the provisions. So because we don't have the capacity now, it's short-term thinking. We don't subscribe to that at all. We had world-class provisions in the law and the PSA, the new PSA, and we build the capacity to police them. If they have to submit data on time, and he shouldn't worry too much with our capacity to process the data. He should worry about their responsibility to produce the data and submit it to the ministry on time. That is how I see the question of capacity. We're working at building capacity.
Thank you. Finally from me, sir. Troy Resources has walked away owing Guyana over $2.6 billion in royalties. Does the government know its standing with other companies in the industry, and what is being done to ensure there isn't a repeat of this behavior?
As I said before, I would, on that Troy matter, we took charge of the area. That was the last time. I think you should submit. I told Vikram that the media should respond if they're writing in return. Can you please send these questions to me and let them respond in writing from the ministry? Because this issue on the gold sector, particularly this Troy issue, there are lots of details. We heard they have assets here in Georgetown. We're looking for those assets. The control of the area. And so they should really be dealing with those. Those are details that I don't want to get into. They're not policy issues. They're more policing issues. And the ministry should deal with that.
Good afternoon, Vishani from the newsroom. Just following up on the concerns you raised about the statements at the opposition presser. Two things. I just wanted to know, have you communicated how you and the government feel about those statements with the opposition, one? But also, what's the level of discourse between the government and the opposition as it relates to Venezuela, particularly now that we see what appears to be increased military activities by the border?
I know the president briefed the leader of the opposition, and that is their last position that I am aware of, that they were briefed on this matter. But the situation keeps, the president is out of the country now, so when he gets back, I'm sure that there'll be further engagements.
Are you going to register some of those concerns you spoke about here today with the opposition leader, perhaps?
I don't think we need a meeting to register this. But I think he should be aware of this. It's coming from the PNC, he should know this. Coming from the PNC, he should know this, particularly at this time. He could have easily raised, we have seen no evidence about Venezuelans overrunning our registration system or anything of that sort. It was a press conference in the middle of a situation where we're facing threats from this country. I mean Venezuela. It was, the timing of the press conference was a bad one.
On the issue of the ministry speaking. Last week and the week before, you said that it's up to the ministry to speak on the disciplinary action to be taken against Mr. Gosai. Well, we've tried.
The PS?
Yes. He's not answering. The minister isn't answering either. Yeah. And we're tired. And I'm a damn
All right,
rebel.
I'm going to make sure that they have a written response. A written response maybe today or tomorrow from the agency.
You know what's the
Huh?
you know what's the action?
No. I'm not taking all of those issues. I get sucked back into the routine issues. Okay.
Davina Bhagat with Kaitro News. Mr. Jagdeo, Exxon Guyana's president has claimed that the country is not paying an interest rate on its investments in the Stabroek block. Can you confirm this?
Well, if he claims that that's what you, have you confirmed it?
I'm asking you to confirm, sir.
I'm not confirming anything of that. I'm not confirming anything. If he says that, and there is an interest rate, and there is a charge interest rate in the cost bank, then it wouldn't be allowed. So it's a straightforward matter for me, as far as I'm concerned.
Thank you. Sir, Routledge also indicated that Guyana is way behind on auditing the company's multi-billion-dollar expenses. There are some concerns regarding, us moving ahead and approving so many projects. How do you respond to those concerns?
About what?
Guyana approving more and more projects, even as we are yet to audit so many of the company's expenses.
Yeah, but they're two different things. They're producing and one is audit. The licensing of the new production is something that we can, the policymakers have to get involved in after technical review. And so we've been able to get that going. As far as I'm concerned, the audits are going to be on track because we've completed up to 2020. They're now selecting the firm to do their audit up to the last year. So I think we'll be on track maybe before mid next year. So I don't see it as it's going to be a delay. This one took too long to complete. It wasn't that the audit wasn't done on time. It's just that the movement of the report between the parties that are interested in this matter, the IHS market, the Ministry of Natural Resources, the GRA, and ExxonMobil, that languished, and that is what led to this long period. Yes. That is what led to the long period of it not being closed. So I think that the whole question of delays in audit will go away by next year because we can complete the next audit if we get the contractors hired now or the consultants hired before the end of the year to complete it by mid next year. And that will bring us almost current.
And just for clarity, sir, was Exxon told which agency it needed to consult with on the audit?
Exxon told which agency?
Okay, so
What
at
do you
their press conference yesterday, Exxon said, not yesterday, but Tuesday, Exxon said that it engaged Gusai at the Ministry of Natural Resources because it never knew that it had to consult with the technical agency, which was GRA on the audit.
No. The thing is that GRA is our advisor on this matter. GRA is the advisor. GRA was not the first line of contact with ExxonMobil. The audit came to us, to the Ministry of Natural Resources, they sent it to the GRA for technical advice. That is why I said the last week that when the president spoke with Mr. Gosai, he said that he was receiving information and sending all of the information to GRA throughout. GRA said they never received any of the information. Last week, you recall me saying that when he spoke with them together. That is what they said to the president. So it was a breakdown between the two technical agencies. GRA claimed they never had all of the submissions that came from Exxon, but not approved by the government of Guyana. They never saw any of those.
Okay, finally from me, how does government view the company awarding contracts for FPSOs without the relevant project approvals?
The thing is that these are long lead items. A company does this on its own, but this is a risk that they take on their own, because if they have to, it's like a big project. There are some long lead items. So if you want to keep momentum, you have to start discussions even before you've completed all of the permitting process. But if you don't get the permit, then it's your money you lose. You lose your money.
Good afternoon. Shaquan Gill, Department of Public Information. VP, we've heard about the $5 billion that has been allocated for cost of living. And it was said previously, of course, that we would know where this would be going pursuant to consultation. Are there any updates?
Yeah, well, the $5 billion is still there. It's not like it's been expended as yet. So there are some ideas already. I've seen some ideas floated about how to utilize, but there's been no final decision as to what will go where. But it's sitting in the, I saw Annette Ferguson wants to know where the $5 billion is. It's not, it didn't disappear, Annette. It's in the Treasury, still there.
Mr. Jagdeo, Dennis Shabral, Damarawi. Sir, in dealing with the Venezuelan issue and your response to the concerns by the opposition, one of the issues you did not touch on was the security aspect. How convinced are you that among those Venezuelans who are arriving, that they may be fifth columnists, as is being described by sections of the opposition? And what safeguards are there to ensure that the system is not being infiltrated?
It's a very difficult thing to do, because people arrive often without going through recognized points of entry. I know that the security forces see this as an urgent issue and an important one. I know of a recent incident where a number of people arrived. There were concerns about the same matter, and a lot of checks, background checks, interviews done with people were done by our security forces with these individuals. So the security forces are taking that concern seriously, the one raised. So it's not as though the concern doesn't exist. As I said before, I share the same concern as opposition leader when APNU had announced this policy of building settlements in Region 1. You recall they were looking for land. And I share the same concern. Ironically, now Norton is saying precisely and expressing the same concern that I had expressed as opposition leader when they were doing this. I just gave our position that we must not treat all the Venezuelans as a monolith, because there are lots of people there who by our constitution have rights. They're descendants of our people, Guyanese. And therefore they have some rights that are different than the rights of the others. But the others have to be treated as refugees decently too. But the Guyanese have, and those of Guyanese parentage have additional rights once they're here. And our laws don't allow us to discriminate against them, or nor our constitution. But it is a serious issue.
And is government taking any steps to ensure that the Venezuelans are not concentrated in large numbers in the county of Essequibo?
Yes, from what we look at, we've seen people all over. In Berbice, you have almost every area. We've seen no organized attempt to concentrate groups of Venezuelans in any geographic part of our country, any organized attempt. But we remain watchful. The security forces have, in these communities too, eyes and ears, where you have pockets of people living. And we can't be speaking about everything in the public domain, but I can assure the leader of the opposition that what he said now, we've been concerned about since they announced the plans to settle people. Felix was there announcing the plan to settle, and they had already identified the land to settle people there in Region 1. Thank you.